Hi, my name is Galbreath. Um, I am an interdisciplinary study major, like the rest of us. My concentrations are youth ministry and Bible and theology. So for this presentation, I'm going to be discussing my paper, which I wrote on, and the title of it is Should the Church Have the Primary Responsibility in Teaching the Bible to and Discipling Adolescents? So we can just go through the objectives and some of just the purposes for this study. So the purpose of this study is, the objective of this paper is to examine the possibilities of whose primary responsibility it is for teaching the Bible to adolescents. This study will explore the biblical positions as well as the opinion of scholars concerning the primary responsibility of teaching the Bible. This study integrates the areas of Bible and youth ministry. So first, why is this even important? The first reason why it's important is because this study will examine if the church should play the primary role in teaching the Bible to adolescents. The second reason it's important is because it addresses the parents' primary responsibility for teaching the Bible to their children. Third, it will show the transition from biblical discipleship in the home to depending on the church solely. Lastly, it will show the importance of churches working with parents to equip them to become primarily responsible for the discipleship of their children, and of course, adolescents. So we can just go through and really break this down a little bit. So based on scripture, whose responsibility is it? We see a lot of churches who take on the responsibility of making sure that they teach the children the Bible and they disciple their children. Even if you look at some of the mission statements of youth groups and just the mission statements for churches, that's what they really do. But according to the biblical text, whose responsibility is it? Should the church actually be the primary? Should they have that primary responsibility for discipling children and adolescents, or does it belong to someone else? So that's the beginning of my paper. Basically, when you look at an examination of the biblical text, I use the scripture Deuteronomy 6:4-9, which states the following: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. So, there are specific instructions given to the new generation of Israel entering the Promised Land. It was important for them to know and understand the commandments that God had given them and to not turn away from them. Although this passage is speaking to a specific group of people, the idea can be applied in the lives of all believers, even us as present-day believers. The Israelites were to be constantly reminded of what God had done for them and to teach their children these same things. So when we look at this passage in Deuteronomy, it can be seen as means for maintaining and keeping up religion in the hearts and homes of present-day believers. It was the parent or adult's responsibility to impress or make the commandments known to their children. The methods given in this passage to impress the commandments were things that were done at home because home was where children were supposed to learn. The home was considered the first and most effective agency in the education process, and parents were considered the first and most effective teachers of their children. There are many scriptures that I could list that discuss your parents' responsibility in teaching children. So we can just take that one scripture that's from the Old Testament, but there are plenty of New Testament scriptural references as well that reference parents being the ones that are primarily responsible for teaching their children. So if we look at that, now we can fast forward and we can look at what changed. So basically what happened is, there are a lot of reasons for the reversal of the roles. When did the church become responsible? There are many different reasons why. We can look at our culture and we can see that culture has changed, where at one point families were very much integrated in themselves, where they were very much together. They did everything together. Schooling happened at home. Religious studies happened at home. The families were always together. Mothers didn't even, during that time, mothers didn't even leave the home. Everything was done at home. So as we can look and just see over time, we can see children started attending public schools. The public school system came into existence. That always wasn't that way. That began to separate children from themselves, that also from their families, that also took on this new idea of adolescence. And adolescence being this time period where they were separated kind of from their families. So I also feel like even in terms of family structure has changed quite drastically. So when we look at what used to be, two parents would be at home with their children, there was always that home structure for someone to be there. Religious studies was always incorporated. It was just a part of everyday life. There wasn't life or without religious study. It was always that way. Now we can just look at, how religious study is now. I mean, we can look at what culture is like now. The family structure is completely different. You have single parent homes, you have same sex parents, you have adoptive parents, you have joint families where you have step parents and step children and half siblings, and there's a lot of different things that go on. Also, we now have parents both leaving the house to work. In those homes where there are actually two parents, that are married and that are, raising their families together, we now have mothers and fathers who are going out and making money to be able to provide for their children. When we look back years ago, that didn't have to happen. It was it was much more common for wives and for mothers to stay at home and take care of the children while the husband went out and made money. Now you have mothers who are working these full-time jobs to be able to support what their husband is doing, and their husband's working full-time jobs too. So when you look at the transition and everything that's happened, there's a big change in terms of what's happened in society and in culture as to why the church would have to take on more responsibility, for teaching the Bible to adolescents. Because unfortunately, if you have parents who are working a lot, or working all the time, because there's so many hours in a work week, it just goes beyond the average amount of hours. There's so many people that are working overtime and double shifts. So when you have parents who are at work all the time, or you have children that come from single parent households who don't have two parents at the home, and when they do come home, they're tired, they don't have the time, or even the opportunity to be able to teach their kids. There are a lot that goes into, this whole change. So when we look at that, we can see why the church has taken on the responsibility. However, it is not the church's primary responsibility. The church should work with parents to supplement what's going on. Biblically speaking, it is still the parental responsibility, or the adults or guardians who are in the house of those children. They have the primary responsibility. God has given them that responsibility. However, it is the church's responsibility to supplement what's going on, and it is the church's responsibility to equip parents to be able to disciple their kids and to show them, because God will hold them accountable for their children. That's what Scripture says. So when we look at this whole movement of family ministry, we have family equipping ministries, we have family integrated churches, we have all these different movements where they seek to bring the family back together, and they seek to equip parents with biblical knowledge and just different ways of being able to give parents what they need, so that they can take it home to their children and they can make this alive and real to their children, so their parents, so the children are learning from their parents. And when they go to church or they go to youth group, it's not foreign to them, or it's not brand new to them. They're learning at church what they've already been hearing at home. So according to Scripture, it is the parents' primary responsibility to disciple their children. The church should have the secondary responsibility, and the church should also equip parents to disciple their children. That is the basic core of my paper. And I mean, it was very interesting. I did find it very interesting. Because I mean, we see a lot of, sometimes it can be a little controversial, because of all the changes in society. But according to Scripture, there is one answer. So, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And of course, feel free to leave any comments or any questions for me. Thank you.